So we're going to be looking at the non-restrictive techniques. The non-restrictive techniques include your presence, direction, verbal and non-verbal, touching, prompting, guiding, and disengagement. When you talk of restrictive techniques, you are talking of techniques such as escorting, seclusion, physical containment, full restraint, and mechanical restraint. On this course, we are not going to be talking about such techniques. It's only when you work as close protection officer that is when you learn restrictive techniques. Now, from the definition of physical intervention techniques, or definition of physical intervention as the use of direct or indirect force to limit someone's movement. You can see that there is a use of force. You will agree with me that if you use force on anyone, there's every tendency that you can injure the person. Right? There's every tendency. When I held the shoulder of Karum, if I continue to do that for a long time, obviously I'm going to hurt him. So whenever you use force on someone, there's every possibility that you can harm them. So this low-level force that you are expected to use, if you use them and you are not using it properly, what do you think could happen to you? What do you think will happen to you? You can get sued, yes? What other things? When you are working and you injure someone, what other things that could happen to you? You get fired, you lose your job, yes?
You put your own safety at risk.
You put your own safety at risk, yes? Make the situation worse. What other things?
Lose your license.
You lose your license. You lose income. There will be complaint against you. The venue where you are working, they will give you bad reputation. People will say, oh, don't go to that venue. Those guys working there, those security guys working there, they're not good at all. There could even be criminal proceedings. There could be civil actions. They can report it to the local authority, the venue, that those guys that are working there, they need to be retrained. So all these things are the things that could happen to you. The improper use of the force could make the situation worse. It could spoil the team's reputation, cause complaint, cause disciplinary proceedings, civil actions, cause criminal proceedings, result in loss of SI license, and result in injury or death. And you don't want this to happen to you.
No.
When we are doing the first module, I mentioned to you the definition of murder. So when you injure someone, and that injury eventually leads to the death of that person, yes, you could be charged for murder if it is within 1 year and a day. So when you have committed murder, it goes onto your record. You have criminal records. At the end of the day, you might not be able to work. No one will tell you they are denying you work. They are not employing you because of a record. But once this is that, then because, oh no, we have a more qualified person. When you cannot bring income in, how do you pay your bills? How do you take care of your family? How do you take care of your children if you have any? So these are the things that could happen to you when you do things and you don't do them properly. Those supervisors, therefore, should only use physical intervention as a last resort. What does that mean, guys? Yes? As a last resort.
It is absolutely necessary.
When it's absolutely necessary. You will normally use physical intervention to protect yourself and others from a dangerous situation. You will normally use physical intervention to disengage from a harmful contact. And you will normally use physical intervention to separate someone from a trigger which might lead to a cause of event. Like you did during your conflict resolution or display of your knowledge of conflict management techniques. You see two people arguing or fighting. You go there, separate them. Talk to the other person nicely. Your other colleague take the other one, talk to them nicely. That is what physical intervention is basically meant for. It is not meant to show your 10 parts, how heavy, how well you can box, or how well you can display your energy. Now, legal implications. From the definition of physical intervention, there is obviously a use of force, right? Now, where did we get that authority from? Who gave us that power? Who gave us that authority that we can use force on another person? Well, through the law, through the government, through the law. Now, we have the authority, one, from the Licensing Act 2003. The Licensing Act 2003 establishes SIA. And part of the job of SIA is to ensure that individuals who are going to be working in the private security industry, they are licensed before they work in the private security industry. And therefore, they made it unlawful for anyone who works without a license. The person can be in prison for 6 months and can be fined up to how many pounds? 5,000 pounds. And the employer who put you to work without a license, yes, can be fined unlimited amounts. So this licensing act ensures that anyone who is going to work in the private security industry must be trained and must be fit. And that is why when you finish this course, once you pass your exams, you will have to apply to the SIA. The SIA is going to check you out, who you are, where you're living, what you have been doing in the last 5 years, whether you have a criminal record and everything. So by so doing, the public tend to have confidence. When they see you with that badge, they have the confidence that they are dealing with someone who has been trained, who is competent, who is fit, and obviously understand their limitations, what they can and what they cannot do. We also have some authority from common law self-defense. Common law self-defense. gives us the right, not just security operative, anyone who find themselves in an imminent danger, they have every right to defend themselves. But what does the law say? You need to use a reasonable force. Reasonable and necessary force. Yes, you have a right to defend yourself, but you need to use a reasonable force, and it must be necessary while you are defending yourself. You cannot say, because you are defending yourself, yes, I just hit you with this bottle, and the next thing is you hit me with a sledgehammer. So whatever force you are using to defend yourself must be reasonable and must be necessary. That is the position of the law. We also have another law. Under Section 3, Criminal Law Act 1967. This gives everyone living in the United Kingdom the right to use a reasonable and necessary force to effect the arrest of someone who is committing an offense known as indictable offense. What is indictable offense? I've mentioned it in this class. That is an example. Murder is an example. But what is an indictable offense? Yes. Indictable offense is a serious crime that when committed, they can only try that person at the Crown Court. It has to be Crown Court because it's a serious crime. And I've mentioned this, example of that. We have murder. Yes? Homicide? Arson? Fraud? Rape? Sexual assault? Theft? GBH? GBH with intent? ABH? And so on. Kidnapping. So when you are effecting an arrest of anyone committing this offense, or someone who is repeating the committance of this offense, or is trying to evade arrest after committing this offense, this law, Section 3, Criminal Law Act 1967, has given us that power to effect such arrest. And this is what we call citizens' arrest. And it's not limited to security operatives alone. Anyone in the United Kingdom. Lastly, we have same authority, yes, from the common law breach of peace. If someone is breaching the peace, someone just get up from here now, start throwing, chairs and tables, disturbing everybody, right? We can use a reasonable force, yes, to stop the person, and if need be, to keep the person until the police come to get the person. You can see that there are a lot of emphasis on reasonable and necessary force. We all have ethical duty to work within the law without hurting the customers we are hired to protect. Don't forget, I've always mentioned that our job is more or less a customer service. The customers are there for us to protect. The staff are there for us to protect. The premises are there for us to protect. Why should we then hurt the customers that we are hired to come and protect? So you want to make sure that even when you are using this low-level force, you want to make sure you are not breaking the law at the same time. Trespass. A trespass is committed when someone is improperly on someone else's property without consent. As security operative, when someone comes to your venue and the venue policy says they need to dress in this manner, they need to be of this age. By the time they come towards you, if you need to search them, you search them. By the time you allow them into the venue, you have given them consent. If at any point in time they display an unacceptable behavior or they started behaving in certain manner which is not in line with the venue policies or the licensing objectives, and you now decide that this person needs to go, this person needs to leave the premises. So when you approach the person and ask the person to leave, at that time that you are doing it, you have withdrawn your consent. So when you have withdrawn your consent and the person refuses to leave, the person is committing what we call a trespass. The person has become a trespasser. But what is the position of the law? Before you can use or take someone away from your premises, the law says no more force is used than necessary to remove the trespasser from your premises. No more force than necessary. Again, I've mentioned to you in this class that whenever you are ejecting someone from your premises, you must follow the rule of trespass, which is react. Do you remember? React. Request them to leave. Explain to them why they need to leave. Appeal to them. Confirm to them you're expecting them to leave peacefully. And otherwise, you're going to use force. And if they don't, that is when you take action to eject them. So, if you tell someone and you go through those rules of trespass one by one, do you think a normal person will still stay behind and will not leave? So if they stay behind, that means something is wrong with them, isn't it? Do you think a normal person will stay behind for you to come and eject them? So when you tell someone, if you go through those steps and that person refuses to leave, you should sense that there is a problem. The use of force must be reasonable, must be necessary, preemptive strike, and justification. That is, at any point in time, whenever you use force, that force you are using must be reasonable, it must be necessary, preemptive strike, and justification. Yes?
You'd have to strike someone in self-defense before.
Come again?
You'd have to strike someone before self-defense.
Do you have to strike someone?
So you know when you do self-defense?
Yes? Can I hear you better?
When you do self-defense,
Yes?
you have to strike them first.
Can you strike first?
Yeah.
No.
Or what if they knock you out first?
If he has not struck you, why are you striking him?
Because you know he's going to strike you.
No. Preempt, that is what you call preemptive strike. See someone holding a stick and it's come towards you, yes, then you can defend yourself.
So you're not striking.
What if he has a gun? It's about shooting.
In such situation, use your dynamic risk assessment. Dynamic risk assessment. Sue the subject, the environment, and whether any weapon is involved. Okay? all physical intervention needs to be justified. All physical interventions need to be justified. So, obviously, the higher level restrictive techniques, you must be able to justify why you need to restrain someone on the ground. When you use a higher level restrictive techniques, you must be able to give a higher level justification. So if you cannot justify it, why are you using a higher level restrictive techniques? Justification. The first question is, was there a need to use force? At what stage did the door supervisor stop using the force? What was the size and build of the injured party compared to the door supervisor? Was the force applied in good faith or in a malicious way? Are you using the force as a form of vendetta, as a form of revenge? Maybe you have an issue with someone on your street, and that person now comes to the venue where you are working. Any little thing that you can just, resolve amicably, you now use that as a form of revenge. That, oh, you are in my venue today. I'm going to deal with it. Was the amount of force reasonable or not? What was the extent of the injuries compared to the resistance given? And were there any weapons used or threatened by the other party? Yes? So these are the things, the questions you will be asked to justify your need, to use a force. When considering the use of physical intervention in the workplace, you should also remember and ensure that you do not accidentally or recklessly break any other laws.
Please turn on one mic. This is very.
As a door supervisor, your responsibilities are to take reasonable care of your own health and safety, ensure that your own acts or omission do not adversely affect the health and safety of other people. So while you are making sure that you're taking care of your own health and safety, do not use that to jeopardize the health and safety of other people. That's the position of the law. All right? As a door supervisor, you must follow health and safety policies provided and keep up to date. Practice safe working habits and obey all safety rules. You need to use protective equipment properly and be aware of emergency procedures and ensure that they are followed when necessary. Section 44, the Employment Rights Act 1996. Section 44 of the Employment Rights 1996 protects employees from being disciplined or dismissed from their workplace if they leave the place of work when they are under threat of attack. Whenever you find yourself under threat of attack, you have a right to leave the place of work. And your employer will not be able to dismiss you or discipline you for doing so. But you need to inform your employer what the situation is You are not going to be using that as an excuse not to be going to work and say, oh, yesterday somebody threatened to kill me. Somebody threatened to shoot me. No. So, we need to be very careful while we are exercising our right under the section 44. This law allows the employer to take appropriate measures to protect themselves and others from danger. It also allows employees to protect themselves. Now, if you have reported to your employer this is the situation, they will be able to take the appropriate step to ensure that, your life is, safeguarded. Does that make sense? Professional implications, as well as abiding by the various laws in relation to using force in the workplace, thus supervisor must be aware of the professional implications relating to the use of physical intervention. They also need to familiarize themselves with any sector-specific and professional guidance and standards relevant to their area of employment. For example, for people who work in the health and social sector or those who work in the prisons. If you want to know more about how to work in this sector, you need to visit the SI website for further guidance. Duty of care. If you can remember, I explained to you what is meant by duty of care. Duty of care is a moral or a legal obligations which is expected of every one of us to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of other people. It is a moral and legal obligation. So it is expected of us legally and morally that we need to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of other people. During all physical interventions, it is very vital that you talk and listen to the person being restrained and manage and monitor their safety. Specifically, you need to ensure that nothing affects their ability to breathe, nothing affects their airways, and nothing affects the circulation. This is very, very important. How do you monitor a person's safety during physical restraint or when you are restraining them, either on the seat, standing, or on the ground? You need to make sure that they don't have difficulty with breathing. Whenever there is a complaint with their breathing, you need to do what? You need to cease the restraint, because this becomes a difficulty. It could be a medical emergency. So when you are restraining someone and they tell you, I cannot breathe, we can all remember what happened to George Floyd in the United States of America. He was restrained and he shouted, I cannot breathe. But that warning was ignored. And what happened? He died. So, the signs that a person may be having difficulty includes efforts with breathing, blocked airways or vomiting, passivity or reduced consciousness, being non-responsive, signs of head and or spinal injury, facial swelling, evidence of alcohol or drug overdose, blueness around the lips, face or nails, complaining of difficulty breathing, high body temperature, sweating, hot skin, exhaustion, confusion, disorientation, hallucination, paranoia, bizarre behavior, extreme fear, and of course, high resistance and abnormal strength. When people display this kind of behavior, you need to do what? You need to stop the restraint and attend to that. Remember, the longer the restraint is useful, the greater the exposure to risk and complications. So you need to make sure that at any point in time, you need to watch out for all this when you are restraining someone physically or using any of the physical intervention techniques. If you have any concern about the safety of that person, you need to stop and call the medical experts, call the emergency services, and if you have a first aider, you call the first aider to come and attend to the person. All right? Any question, please?